Good day, Pat the Backyard Builder here. Well, we've started a new project here. Basically, I'm taking these different baskets here and I'm going to be turning them into planters. And well, actually, I'm going to be making model planters out of them and then making molds from that, from which I'll mass produce my planters. But the whole idea is to have of course, capture the texture and look of the various baskets. Now, the process that I'm using to make my models, I'm working with plaster, and I'll just get this other one that I've got on the go here. And basically, what I'm doing, I'm filling in the detail that I don't need with plaster, and then working so that I can capture the detail of the edge of the basket and have preserve enough detail that you can tell that it's a wicker basket, and but I'm filling in a lot of the detail that would normally cause a lot of problems, of course, with casting and cement. And now, of course, one of the problems I also need to address is that normally wicker baskets are like that thin, so like really thin. So what I need to do is I need to make these walls thicker so that I can actually cast them in cement. So what I'm going to do is I'm now that I've captured the detail on the outside now, but by filling in the open spots of the wicker. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to build up these walls on the inside and the bottom, so that when I make my mold, they're at least half, 3/4 of an inch in there, so that I've got enough I can actually cast a model and have it survive the casting process and be quite functional. And it in the end, it should end up looking just like this basket, only being a cement version of it. Now, one of the issues I'm having is that as I go in and fill all the details, I'm having little pieces of wicker that are picking up. Now, I want to preserve these if I can. So rather than breaking them off, I'm just simply taking some white glue and cutting them down here, and then I'm going to put some pressure on that to hold that in place. So I'm just going to I'm going to see what I can do to get some pressure on there, get something that's got a couple of pounds of weight here, and make that hold down. There we go. So you can balance that. There. Now that should hold in place until that sets. Okay, so what I'm basically doing here, I'm just getting rid of the handles. Now, reason for that is basically I don't need them on a planter, and what I'm trying to do here is basically just capture the essence of the basket and not necessarily have the handle here. The handle is actually something like this would be impossible to cast in concrete anyways, so if I can just capture the essence of the basket, that's mainly what I'm after here. There we go. Okay, so now that's ready for the plaster stage. And basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to be building up half 3/4 inch on the bottom and then half 3/4 inch all the way around the inside. That'll give us the thickness that we need for the planter, and then we've got the detail on the outside that we want. We'll just set that aside and on to the next victim. And so once we've cut these supports off, we just pull the weaving through. Pull that away. Not going to need that. And then a little force is all it takes to back the nails out of the base here. Off, and last little piece, and voila, that one is ready for plaster now. Again, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to build it up. Now what we might do with this one here, do a little bit different here. We might just leave, we'll fill in that little gap here so that obviously cement is solid, but what we might do is just build up to the inside right about this point, so at the very top of it, which is about half an inch thick anyways, so the very top of it just shows through neatly, and it'll give us some detail around the top of the planter, whereas with this one here, I've got this small little band, so what I'm going to do, I'm just going to build up about half an inch here and then try and mimic this band again with a scraping of a tool or something on the plaster. And the same thing with that blue basket I showed you earlier. That one should be dry enough that I can... There we go. With this one here, it's wide enough at the top. What I'm going to do is just simply bring the plaster up at an angle, just give it a little bit of a draft to make life easy when I go to pull the mold. But I'm going to stop the plaster. I want to preserve this detail that's right in here, and that will just add to the basket look. And you know, I mean, you know, you don't have to worry too much about the inside because people are going to be filling it up with dirt, you know, so except for the end here, they're not going to be going quite so high with the dirt in this one. But if you you know, at least fill it up, you know, do your detail up to this point, then it does preserve the basket look a little better. that's basically what it looks like first go around here. You're probably not going to get it perfect the first time, so you'll have to do a little bit of scraping, a little bit of filling. This is going to, when it dries, it's going to shrink a lot, so it will crack. You're going to be filling in those cracks for your second go around, but that's not too bad. What I've got going here isn't too bad for a first go around. I'm just going to leave this now, let it dry, and I'll get it a little better the second round. And one thing I do want to make sure I do is I don't want anything to be filling in any details here, so I'm going to clear that off right now because I don't want any details to be filled in the wood area, because what we have out here is actually pretty close to perfect for making our mold with. So we don't want to be blocking any of this detail, so we might as well clean this out while it's soft, and then we don't have to worry about cleaning it out when it's hard and a little more difficult to do. So that's about the only spot where I messed up on, so the rest of it's nice and clean. Got all kinds of detail, including our nails here and stuff that we can see. So yeah, we're just going to set that aside to dry for now, and on to the next one. Now, this one here, I've got the holes in in between the weave where I can expect the plaster to come through. So we'll just start by putting a little bit of plaster on the inside here, and that just gives it something to work against. There we go. Again, we're not going to get this perfect the first time by any means, so you just want to get a nice heavy coat on the back here on the inside, and basically we're just filling it in flush right up to the underside of this lip here. We're going to make it a little thicker here. We'll make the wall probably about 3/4 of an inch thick here by the time we get everything all said and done. We got a little bit coming out here through the weave here, which is exactly what we want to see. We're going to go over the front side here with once this sets a bit, we're going to go over the front side, and we'll fill in behind some of the pieces of the weave here. We don't want that getting caught on the mold. It'll just make our life easier, because we're just after to capture the texture of the weave. We don't necessarily have to have every detail, and we're obviously not going to be casting. Our concrete's going to be solid, so we're not going to be casting where we have a holes in our concrete. So we'll just fill that in. This takes a significant amount of plaster. One thing I do, I keep my eyes open for deals. I'm a truck driver by day and a hobby caster by night, and one of the places I deliver to, a warehouse that does building supplies, and I got a wonderful little deal, i.e. free. They had some boxes of plaster which had gotten damaged. Well, they can't, being a distributor, they can't sell damaged boxes of plaster, so I was able to pick these up at a 100% discount. So that was really nice of them. So it's nice when you know people and they're willing to do little favors for you like that. But you will find you go through a significant amount of plaster doing your baskets like this. But it's a good little way to get the nice texture on the baskets, and beats trying to hand carve it. So, one of the trickiest things I've found is actually to get this stuff to stick to the bottom. What I've found works is if you just go at an angle and you kind of work it with two spatulas. You push down with one and slide with the other, and then go at a little poking motion. You want to get it to actually stick and grab onto the bottom there. Once you've caught that weave, then you can move it with a swishing side-to-side motion, and it seems to spread out. But you have to catch that weave. Now, first coat is usually catch it pretty thin, which is fine because the plaster will stick just fine to itself on a second coat, so you'll be able to make the second coat a little thicker. So, but you just want to get that first coat to grab the weave at the bottom there. The other thing you can do is just go like that and just grab that, and that'll solidify that grab on that weave. And you don't really have to clean that up too much because that's going to be the bottom where you're actually going to be pouring, so you'll never really see that in the end. So yeah, just keep going like that. And again, just get all of the all four sides, just get them all filled up with a back coating. Now you're not going to want to do the front until the back coating has solidified, because otherwise what's going to happen is it's just simply going to push through the weave and have nothing to grab onto. So you want to back coat it first, and then we'll go over once we've back coated it, the next step will be to go over the front. Now I've got it pushing through a bit here. I'm going to have to clean that up with a sponge here, a damp sponge, before I let this cure. Yeah, just kind of smooth it out. It does actually make it a little easier for working on your next layer if you don't have to contend with big ridges. So just kind of smooth it out as much as you can. Yeah, that's what that looks like for now. But gonna have to work on the bottom a little more. Like I say, that's had a little bit of trouble because it didn't want to stick to the weave, but that's fine. I do have it all coated now. It will stick to the dry plaster really easily on the next round, so I'll be able to smooth that out. And get the inside of this a consistent thickness. And okay, so now just need to do a little bit of cleanup here to the outside here. I don't want this stuff here sticking through the weave, because that'll be a little difficult to get off later. So what we're going to do is just going to get ourselves a damp sponge and just wipe that down. Okay, so we got ourselves a bucket of water here, and I'm just going to dab it on here and just take these excess spots of plaster that are coming through, just take them right off. Now, just a note on your cleanup here, should be common sense, but don't ever throw plaster down the sink. Drywall plaster, whatever kind of plaster, it will plug your drain, and you will have a very expensive bill trying to get them open again, because you will have to dig up your lines to open them. So don't ever throw plaster down the drain, or you will eternally regret it. What I do with my plaster water that I rinse my tools and sponges and cloths and everything in, I have a settling bucket, and I pour the water into the settling bucket, and I allow the plaster to settle out, and the plaster will settle out and dry in a couple of days, and then I pour the water off outside after the plaster's settled out of the water, and then I just simply manually wipe the bottom of the container to clean up the plaster that way. Okay, so I've got here a basket that is very porous as far as the holes in the weave go, and it doesn't matter what I do, the plaster goes right through the weave completely and comes out on every side. So basically what I'm going to do here with this one, I push it through from the back, and now I'm going to work it in on the front. I want to try and fill everything so that I only see the top layer of the weave. Again, the main thing here is to get the feel of the weave coming out in the concrete casting. So it's not necessary to actually have the holes in the weave, because that's going to, of course, be a nightmare to make a mold and nightmare to cast. So obviously we're not going to actually have holes in our weave when we cast this. The whole idea is just to get the feel of the weave. So what we're going to do here, I've got sufficient, for the most part, sufficient plaster on the surface here now. I'm just going to start working it in and to the surface, and just try and fill in underneath all the overlapping pieces and get into all the little joints, and just kind of fill everything in. And you just have to get right in here with your hands and just muck around with this stuff. and just work it in everywhere. And that seems to be about the only way you can do this. So, and once I've worked this into all the joints, then I'm going to go over the outside again with with my sponge and just clean it off as much as I can. And the end result is going to be what I want. It'll be the look of a weaved basket, but it'll be something that I can easily cast in concrete. So that's just work it in, push it in under everything, fill all the little holes, work it into the between all the strands. Yeah. Not really much you can do to keep clean with this job. You just kind of have to get in there and do it. So there we go. And then what we're going to do here, we'll once we clean this up, we'll let it set, and then we'll come in and fill any little pinholes the second time around, and make sure that we've got all the holes and everything, and then we'll start building up our thickness on the inside. And a pot this size, we're probably going to want between 1/2 and 3/4 of an inch thickness of the wall. That would be an appropriate thickness to cast a pot this size. This is only about 8 inches deep, 8 inches cubed, I guess. So somewhere between 1/2 and 3/4 of an inch is how thick we're going to want to build up our inside walls and our bottom. So there we go. That's just get the top here. Not too concerned about the inside at this point. Mainly that's just going to dry and make a hard backer for everything else. So, and then we'll deal with making that clean at a later stage here. So anyways, once you've worked it all in to as much as you can, just get your sponge, get it nice and damp, and then just start working over and cleaning it up. You want to take out enough that you get some texture of the basket, but you don't want to take out so much that you open up holes. Now you're going to open up a few holes here and there. It's fine. You can fill that on your second round. But the idea here now is just to take off the excess plaster and just do a nice reveal on the detail. So, like I say, you can get a lot of it here off. You don't want to, this stage in the game, you don't want things plugging up on you. So do what you can to expose all that nice texture of that basket, which is why you're doing this project in the first place. And we're not going to worry too much about the inside for now. We've got to build that up to 1/2 an inch or so, 1/2 an inch, 5/8 of an inch, something like that. So we'll just leave the inside of the basket rough for now, and we'll worry about the inside later. We're just going to clean this up, and then it can be set aside to dry. You're gonna get your water is going to be quite sticky by the time you're done this. You might have to change your water a couple of times. And like I said, don't pour this stuff down the street. Pour it in the back alley and behind the shed or whatever, but don't pour this down the sink, or you won't be able to use your sink until you replace your pipes. So it will plug them and plug them permanently. It's a little cold right now, so I'm using a system of a couple of buckets where I have settling water. I get this water here really dirty, and then I pour it into one bucket, and I let that settle for a couple of days and let a bunch of sediment fall out, and then I pour that water into another bucket and let that settle again for a couple more days. And by the time you've gone through about a week's worth of settling and you're into your second or third bucket, then it's usually safe to pour it down the sink, but not until you've gotten 99.9% of the plaster out of that water, because it will build up on you and destroy your plumbing. So, but yeah, this is coming on quite nicely. You might want to start out just with your sponge just a little damp, and whoop, that's maybe a little too damp, but just work it in there, just bring out that detail, and you can fill in a little more later if you need to. It's a little more difficult to take it out, so if you have to make an error on the side of taking too much out for now, this will harden up in a couple of days and you can proceed on to the next step. One of the nice things about making your models with plaster is that when it comes time to making your molds, because plaster is so dry, it'll draw the moisture out of the latex, and you will be able to make your mold rather quickly. In fact, you can probably use the dipping method with these ones if you got a big enough tank, and the plaster will draw onto itself a thick skin coating because it's so dry. It'll absorb the water, the moisture that's in the latex, and it will give you a really fast mold making experience. So it's one advantage of the plaster modeling. So anyways, once you get done with your cleanup, this is basically what it should look like for the first stage. As you can see, let's see all the nice texture. Got minimal holes here that we'll have to fill up later. We're not worried about that for now. Got a couple of little pieces of straw that have popped up out of the basket here. We're going to glue those into place after this dries. Now, and again, the inside, where we're not going to worry about the inside for now. We need to thicken up the wall, but that'll be for the next stage. Right now, we just want to get the basket weave closed, so that we can make our pot. So that's basically what it looks like for now. We're just going to set that aside to dry and carry on. Okay, so these things have had a chance to cure for a while and dry. And basically what the next step to do here is just go through and just fill all the little spots where your latex could possibly go and get hung up on behind something, because behind every one of these little slots is a little T-shaped crack, and the latex will get into there and you will never get this removed. There's a little hole in behind each one of these cracks here, behind this banding here. You want to get that taken care of and get that filled. So just take a little bit of plaster and just start working it into all the cracks and fill that up nicely. And once we work it in everywhere, then we'll go over this again with a sponge and just wipe it clean, and we'll set things aside for curing again. Again, the underside here, we want to get that. There's a big gap you can see underneath. That's guaranteed to lock onto your mold when you make it. So we want to fill that in. Again, we're basically after preserving the look and the feel of the item. We don't we're not actually trying to reproduce wicker with concrete. We want to reproduce the feel of wicker with the concrete. So and just I've already went through as well and thickened up the inside as well. Now all I'm going to have to do here next, once this dries and cures a bit, I'm just going to have to sand that down and make it nice and smooth on the inside here. You can see how everything's coming along here. It's all nicely filled in over here. Got a few spots here. Got to go back over and get these little spots here. Likely when it dries, it's gonna suck back into a few of these cracks. I might have to do one more filling here just to get all the little spots here. So, but we're coming along. This is really looking good now. So what you're gonna want to do here is just take a little scraping tool and just square off any excess. You want it filled underneath, but you don't want a whole lot of excess out there. So just make sure you grab any excess, get it off there. Like so. I'm just using a little spatula here. And then just take a damp sponge and just kind of clean it up so that we expose the grain of the basket again, because that's really what we're after, is to capture that texture. And once we clean this up again, we'll be setting it aside to dry and cure for another week or so. Just make sure it's all nice and ready to go. And go on to the next edge. Just any spot where there's excessive drywall plaster here, we want to just get that off. just want to keep your sponge damp, but not so damp that you make things runny. So what you want to do is you want to just rub things off here and just kind of clean things up, kind of like you're almost like you're polishing, but you just work it into those cracks, make sure it stays in there. Just use the different edges here. I'm using the square edge of the sponge there to get right into that edge there. Just run along, and I'm just drawing the extra out of the little cracks here, the vertical cracks here now. Just go both ways with it, just pull it out of there. And just keep a bucket of water handy that you can just clean your sponge. And again, just give it a real good squeeze. Make sure you change your water periodically. And like I said earlier, don't ever pour this down the sink. Pour it into a bucket, save it, let it settle out, because this stuff will solidify and block your pipes like you wouldn't believe. So you're going to want to take your time with it. You use a tool, just fill in any little spots that you find along the way that need a little bit more plaster in them. Just fill that up and clean them up. Just take your time with it. And at this point here, you want to come up with as clean of a model as you can, because any errors that you make in your modeling process are going to be replicated forever in concrete once you make your mold. So you want to have your model looking as nice as you can, and that's actually looking pretty nice. You see lots of detail here now. All the cracks are filled. All the holes under the bend here are all filled. I've got no places that's going to get hung up on the mold when I take the mold off. Oh, I got a little tiny hole in the plaster right here, so I'm just going to put a little extra plaster into there. Just work that in. There we go. And just want to catch all these little things right now. I've got lots of detail. I can see the wood grain. I can see the nails that hold the basket together. All that little character, you want to capture that. So just keep working on it here. There we go. And that's actually looking really good for now. So it's a little rough on the inside still, but what we're going to do, we're going to take a drum sander and go around that, and we'll take a flat disc sander and we'll do the bottom here. We'll do that by machine, and then we'll finish off with a hand sanding. But I can see all the detail around the top here now, and I've got my pot to about the thickness where I'm going to want it. That'll make a nice casting. One thing I've done as well, when I've built up on the inside here, I've made it go in so it's a little thicker at the bottom, a little thinner at the top, so it's got a bit of what's known as a draft, which is a slight angle. That just makes life easier when it comes to pulling your plugs and stuff out of the center of your mold. And but yeah, this is just about just about ready here. We're gonna let it dry for a few more days, and then we'll touch up any details that we need to, a final sanding, and then we're ready for making our mold. And one thing you're going to want to do is maybe just flip these things upside down and just look for little cracks like this that also need to be filled. Because sometimes you don't get all these little spots here when you do the initial filling. So just come by and just put just a little bit more plaster in those, and that way your mold isn't going to get hooked onto those when you do your mold making. Just fill those little spots. Take your sponge and just wipe that over so that crack isn't gonna cause any trouble down the road here when you're making your molds. Now the other thing I'm doing, I'm building up the top here, and the idea of building the top is just in case the basket isn't perfectly level. What I'm going to do is I built it up falsely, and then I'm just going to sand it down so that the bottom is perfectly level. So when I turn the mold over to make or turn the basket over to make the mold, then the product that I make will in fact be level. Okay, so now that this has had a chance to dry and cure for a week or so, we want to thicken up our wall and get it nice and even. So what I've got here, I've got a caliper, and basically what we're going to do, we're going to set our caliper to 3/4 of an inch, because that's how thick I want my wall, and we'll just go like so, and we just tighten up our caliper to 3/4 of an inch. Double check that. I can tighten up a little more. Just a little too tight. We'll take there we are. That's about 3/4 of an inch. And what we're going to do here, we're just going to put that inside here. Now at the very bottom here, I've got it marked out. And basically what I did is I pushed it against the outside, and the inside I'm marking it at 3/4 of an inch thickness, and that tells me how much I need to build that up on the inside. So we're just going to take some plaster now and start building that up. Anyways, just grab a good hunk of plaster and just put it on and try and thicken things up to your lines there. You can be quite generous at this point here, because there's quite a bit. I'm taking this from about a 1/2 inch thick all the way up to about 3/4. So we'll just continue to work that around there. And I'm going to be doing this to all my pots that I've got on the go now. I want them all about 3/4 of an inch thick, and not too worried if I get them a little too thick, because you can always sand it down if it's too heavy. But yeah, just work it in there. Okay, the draft just means it's at a slight angle, and what that does, well, it's almost like in this particular object, a draft is going to form a bit of a V shape. That way, when we pull the mold, the mold block, the filler, okay, it's going to pull up, and it's not going to jam on the sides here. So it just makes it easier for demolding. And the smoother you can make your sides, the easier it is to sand later. And I know we need to make that. I've already done the caliper on the base there. I know we need to make that base just a little bit thicker as well. So we're just going to add a little bit more to the base here. And trick to get it to stick initially. Once you get the first part of it on, then the rest of it goes fairly easy. So I'll just try and smooth that out a bit. It helps once this has actually set up a bit. It helps if you've got a round rod, probably can use, well, you can use something like a broomstick, but if you can get something like a wooden dowel that they use in closets, and just have a rounded over end, it just works really good for smoothing these off once this plaster started to set up a bit. There we go. Just kind of do it by eye. It doesn't have to be perfect. The plants aren't going to mind if the hole's not perfectly round. Just has to look decent near the top, because that's where the customer will see it, is when it's in use, is all at the top. So this is going to be all filled with dirt here when it's in use anyway, so it's not that big of a deal if it's not perfect on the inside. But anyways, once you've got this nicely smoothed off, the final step is just going to be to sand everything and make it look decent, and then you can get into your mold making portion of the project. And anyways, that's about it for today. Have a good day.